All right, how to improve your Spirit Halloween mask part 3. I love that this has become an annual tradition. First thing you need to do is rip off these straps, take out these rivets, which is more challenging than I thought it would be, but if you get a pair of pliers, you can just pop them right off. And tear these straps off and throw them away. You're never going to use them again. You want to sand the entire front of the mask thoroughly. I use 120 grit paper. Just know that the lower the grit, the more it's going to tear up the plastic. Now I'm using a 3/8 inch drill bit to drill out all the vent holes to make them bigger. I don't like that they're kind of small on the original mask. And I'm drilling these out from the back so all that shredded up plastic and the rougher part of it is on the back side of the mask, not the front. Now with the Dremel, I'm cleaning up these vent holes because as you can see, they get a little wonky because that plastic gets torn up really easy by the drill bit. It doesn't go through cleanly, so it makes these funky shapes. So I'm cleaning that up with the Dremel bit. Behind the cutting disc, this is my absolute favorite Dremel bit. You've seen me use it over and over again in previous mask videos. I don't know what the specific name of this bit is, but as you can see, I'm using it to even out the vent holes all over the mask. Now this is something else I do in a lot of my masks. I just don't show it that often, but I hit the edges of all the plastic that I've cut or drilled through with some fire. It cleans up those little hangers and the little burrs that remain that seem to never go away with sandpaper. Now here I'm taking off the edge of the mask and kind of reshaping the outer edge of the mask. I don't like the way they look originally. They're a little bulbous and kind of goofy looking, so I like to cut a new edge around the mask and give it a different silhouette. Now here I'm adding random damage. This mask is going to be themed around the part 5, you know, chevrons and color scheme. But as far as the damage, I want to make up my own stuff, so I'm just winging it here, just freestyling some damage all over the mask, which is a lot of fun to do. Here I'm using the tip of a knife to give the cuts more of a V shape because that cutting disc has a very flat end on it and I don't want the cuts to be flat like that, so I'm using the point of a knife to give them more of a V shape, more of a knife cut. Okay, so here's the mask, reshaped, damaged, and sanded down. If you sanded the mask thoroughly, you probably don't need primer. I do it as added insurance, but so much spray paint is paint plus primer now that it's probably unnecessary. I'm spray painting the back black instead of primer gray like I usually do. I just want it to be black. No particular reason for that. Here I'm using some 3000 grit sandpaper to sand the prime surface to smooth it out. Now for the next part, I hope you'll go to my Etsy shop and get yourself a full-scale printable Chevron template that I sell for $1.35. You can download it and print out the chevrons that are the correct size for your mask. There's many ways to use this template. I'm going to show you the way that I use it, but go get your template from my Etsy shop, print it out, cut out the chevrons you're going to use. here I have a bottle of plain water. There's no hairspray in that. And I'm gonna put the chevrons on the mask wherever I want them. So I'll place the chevrons on the mask where I want them to be, and then I just spray them with some spritzes of water, plain water, and that'll make it stick to the mask temporarily. Just wet them down really good. And then I use a paper towel or towel, whatever, and just dry off the entire area so that I'll be able to put tape around these chevrons. Now we get some painter's tape, some 3M edge lock painter's tape, and we tape off all the edges. So you can just pop those off and then dry the area really good. I know a lot of you ask me about having paint leak under the tape whenever you do this. I have that happen almost every single time too, and I'll show you exactly how to fix it. I love using these type of brushes to paint these on because they don't leave streaks like a paintbrush would. It makes it look almost like it was spray painted on or airbrushed on. And the part 5 has these little smudges of paint on the chin and on the forehead, and you can kind of see it there, kind of a bad shot of that, but I added those because in the part 5 I think it's implied that these chevrons were painted on by Roy as opposed to decals like they're on the other movies. And now here, I use my X-Acto knife. This is how I get rid of those pesky spots that get under the tape. If you're just very, very gentle with your knife and scrape across the acrylic paint, it'll come right off without damaging the base coat of spray paint that you have. Just be extremely gentle with it. And as you can see, it just comes right off. My favorite technique, dragging the knife blade flat across the acrylic paint to add some distressing and some damage. That's the other benefit of painting on chevrons as opposed to using decals. It's a lot easier to add damage and distress to them. Now I'm using burnt umber for the dirt. I'm using a dry rag. I dip the rag in the paint and then I kind of wad up the rag and mush it in there so it's not just a glob of paint, it's kind of worked into the rag. And then I start tapping and pushing and smudging on the mask, creating dirty areas. Now I'm painting in all the cuts and damage that I created using that burnt umber as well. Just want to give the damage some definition so it stands out from the mask. Now here I'm using a brushed out brush to apply more dirt. This is one of my favorite painting techniques. Rapidly go across the surface that you want to paint and apply more and more pressure. As you can see, it's more about applying the paint gradually instead of just throwing paint on there.
Now I'm using pavement acrylic paint for the outer edge of the mask. This is one of my favorite paints. It's basically an ultra dark gray. It's not black. Here's what I mean when I say a brushed out brush. You dip the brush in paint and then brush it out against a rag or a paper towel or whatever to where you don't have just a glob of paint on there. And now I go around the entire outer edge of the mask. This is one of my favorite effects to do because I love the vignette effect that it adds to the mask when you go dark around the entire outside edge of the mask. Now using water and cheapo rag that I got from Dollar General, you dip the rag in water and then you mash the rag to where it's not just soaking, dripping wet. You just want it to be a damp rag. This is a technique to add more texture to the paint as well as clean up any areas that you might have overdone it with the dirt. Just kind of smudge and wipe and push and jab and twist and just mix it up. Just a cool texture effect, you know, something different. But also you can use this rag to wipe away and clean up areas where you might have too much acrylic paint if you want to get rid of some of it. Something else I like to do is lightly drag my X-Acto knife blade through the damaged areas to give them some scratching in there. Alright, I get a lot of complaints about my blood never being dark enough. In an attempt to appease you guys who are not happy with the darkness of my blood, I bought a new shade of red called Barn Red. And so I get a little spray bottle of water from Walmart and I put a whole bunch of Barn Red acrylic paint in there and then just add a little bit of water. I'm sorry I don't have like exact measurements for this, I just kind of eyeball it. I would recommend a few test shots for sure, and you can also prime up the nozzle. It gives you an idea of what to expect when you apply the blood to your final product mask. Now here's the fun part. You can tell I'm nervous because it takes me a minute to actually fire off. Once you go, you gotta go. You've got to be careful not to go overboard. Once you start doing it, you kind of don't want to stop, but if you don't, you're going to end up with just a bloody mess of a mask. But this part is a lot of fun. These look much more like blood spurts as opposed to big spatters like I do in the past, which is awesome. I love a new look like that. I usually do about 2 or 3 coats of lacquer. And remember, the lacquer and the clear coat surface is very necessary to protect your work and to give yourself a nice shiny finish if you want it. You can see we got a great shine here on the mask, but you can't see it in the video, but there's little burrs. Anytime you do any kind of spray paint, even the lacquer and clear coat finish, there's these little tiny burrs, little bits that you can still feel on the surface. So I get a plain piece of paper and I use a scratch pad because it's the perfect size for my hand. But it's just plain paper. And I sand down the entire surface, just pretend I'm sanding the mask with a plain sheet of paper. And it makes a big difference. It turns the surface into like this glass smooth surface where you don't feel anything at all anymore.
Alright, so now here's something that I haven't done in the past 2 Spirit Halloween videos is change out the straps. But I got 3/4 inch elastic strap from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to cut a 14-inch length strap and a 14.5-inch length strap. So here's the 14-inch strap. Now here's the 14.5-inch strap, which is going to be the vertical strap that goes to the top snap on the mask. Alright, so for the 14.5-inch, you want to fold it at around 2 inches from one of the ends, and then hot glue the very end of that. You can hot glue or stitch it. I don't know how to stitch, so I'm hot gluing. And that loop is for the other strap to feed through, because you can make a T basically in the back of the straps. And so then on the other end, you're going to fold about a 1/2 inch of the end of the strap over, and I'm using nails to hold them in place until I put the snap buttons in there. And then on your second strap, on the 14-inch strap, do the same thing on both ends, fold in about 1/2 inch. Now, I completely underestimated how hard it is to create the holes in these things. I thought when I drove the nail through that, oh yeah, I've just created a hole in these straps and it'll be easy for me to put the snap stems through there. I was completely wrong. The one thing that I almost messed up on was that the stems on mine aren't very long, and they almost weren't long enough for me to apply them. So pay attention to that if you can find some with some longer stems on them. Alright, so now we got the loop. The loop-de-loo, that's your vertical strap. And you're going to run the other strap through there, make sure all the buttons are facing the same direction, and snap those bad boys on. So there we go, the tradition continues. I can't wait to make another one of these next year for you guys. I hope you go get your Spirit Halloween mask, and I hope you customize it to your heart's content, and I hope you have an awesome, awesome Halloween. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting.